Okay, Ruskin's Storm Cloud, Heavenly Messages and Pathetic Fallacies in a Denatured World. It's a paper by Thomas Ford, who is a literary historian of Romanticism, postdoctoral fellow at the Humanities Research Centre at the Australian National University, so he's an Australian. His translation of Boris Groy's The Communist Postscript was published by Verso in 2010. He's currently completing a book on romantic atmospheres, the poetics of aerial culture. Okay. 19th century climate change. Man-made climate change began in 1871, asserted John Ruskin in two lectures delivered February 1884 at the London Institute and subsequently published as The Storm Cloud of the 19th Century. 1870s and 1880s, Ruskin stated, formed a period which will assuredly be recognized in the future of meteorological history as one of the phenomena hitherto recorded in the course of nature. Particularly cited a new type of cloud, gloomy, poisonous, and malignant, a contradictory plague wind, at once dark and blanching, that blew incessantly, tremulously, and intermittently from all directions. Ruskin was no doubt that these phenomena were the result of human action. He identified the Franco-Prussian War as the approximate cause of the change in climate, but its underlying cause he declared was blasphemy. The claim was proven too incredible for many subsequent interpreters to accept. Right, how would blasphemy cause a climate catastrophe? Indeed, it has been dismissed or diminished in three main ways. Most frequently, storm cloud has been read as an early instance of the emergence of modern environmental consciousness. It is assumed that, if real, the changes in the climate noted by Ruskin were caused by industrial air pollution, which is consequently understood to have been its true subject. This is a line adopted by Wright. So the assumption being made is that he's not actually talking about blasphemy, but he's actually talking about pollution. This is a line adopted by Friedrich Kirchhoff, for instance, who notes that it has long been recognized that there is a correlation between the coming of Ruskin's storm cloud and a dramatic increase in industrial, largely coal smoke pollution. Right. Ruskin's assertion that in fact blasphemy is to be blame is then understood to be metaphorical, not literal. This way, Ruskin's text is assimilated seamlessly to a later tradition of political ecology. However, this interpretation overlooks the fact that Ruskin does discuss air pollution as a possible cause of the storm cloud, but only dismiss it emphatically. Okay, so this is a faulty interpretation on the part of literary critics. It looks as if it were made of poisonous smoke. Very possibly, maybe there are at least 200 furnace chimneys in a square of 2 miles on every side of me. But mere smoke would not blow to and fro in that wild way. It looks more to me as if it were made of dead men's souls. Last sentence prefers, of course, the battles of the Franco-German campaign, which is especially horrible to me in its digging. A moat floated with the waters of death between the two nations for a century to come. Ruskin's argument here is clear. Pollution is not to blame. Instead, the climate has been changed by a violent breakdown in human communication. A fracture that relies on the Franco-Prussian War, and that within decades will be incarnated again in the trenches of the Western Front, moats flooded with the waters of death that Ruskin so accurately foretells. The altered atmosphere of modernity, Ruskin explicitly states, is not caused by emissions but by utterances. The poison is evil words rather than sulfurous combustion compounds. It emanates not from smokestacks but from human mouths. But how can words condense into toxic airborne events? What links language and meteorology? In Modern Painters, Volume 3, Ruskin sets out his theory of the pathetic fallacy, which simply consists of the attribution of human qualities to the natural world. Ruskin cites examples such as Charles Kingsley's line, "The cruel, crawling foam," and Coleridge's description of an autumn leaf buffeted by the breeze is the one leaf, the last of its clan, that dances as often as dance it can. But of course, the sea is not cruel, but emotionless. While leaves neither desire nor are able to dance, nature does not answer the imagination in the way these lines assume. Ruskin uses this principle to criticize the ideology of much romantic nature poetry, the fantasy that the world corresponds to human sentiments. But a second reading of Storm Cloud convicts Ruskin's essay of committing just such a pathetic fallacy, involving the transference of Ruskin's own turbulent mental state onto the heavens. Right. Ruskin does commit the pathetic fallacy. He is cruel but emotionless, while leaves neither desire nor are able to dance. Thus, when critics suggest that Ruskin's storm cloud as diabolic weather is to be read biographically, as his climactic shadow struggle projected as apocalyptic myth. Another similarly identifies the cloud to be a symbol of the madness he feared encroaching upon him, while a third interprets the text as a confusion of his own altered response to nature with an imagined decline in nature herself. A mistaking of inner and outer weather of the cloud within his own mind and imagined cloud without. This psychobiographical approach positions Ruskin's climate change as a projection, a symbol, or an error. The truths he thought he was speaking could have been true only of him, not of the world. For the world's natural parameters assumed cannot be redrawn by human language. Right, but this is the pathetic fallacy. To believe that is to commit a pathetic fallacy. Right. It is odd that Ruskin would do that after going on a rant about the pathetic fallacy in modern painters, but once again, Ruskin's claim that language can change the climate is understood to be metaphorical. It is just that Ruskin remains unaware of his metaphor. But it seemed once impossible to accept that words can materially affect the weather. This is no longer the case today. It is now widely acknowledged that language is one of the many factors influencing the climate. The climate implications of certain types of statements are regularly analyzed. Public discussion often focuses, for example, on how economic proposals or political agreements or failures to agree might affect global weather patterns. This context throws fresh light on Ruskin's claim that climate change is an event within the history of communication. As Endo R.E. comments, it is perhaps no longer so easy to dismiss Ruskin's apocalyptic meteorology as the delusions of an unhappy neurotic. Finally, a third reading reverses the value of the pathetic fallacy, which is now even seen to overturn a flawed Cartesian understanding of the relationship between humans and their environment. Neil Evernden, for example, so maybe there's some way in which human beings and the environment are mystically interrelated beyond sort of Newtonian mechanics that would cause the environment itself to react to human behavior, which it's a theistic kind of mode of thought. It's alien to science. Neil Everdeen, for example, has argued that the pathetic fallacy provides a way out of the dualism of subject and object. This fallacy actually expresses the subversive nature of ecology, assumption of literal and interrelatedness. What Ruskin had once dismissed as dangerous fantasy is here conceived, recovered as an eco-phenomenological virtue. Once we engage in I love that term, eco-phenomenological virtue. For once we engage in the extension of the boundary of the self and the environment, then of course we imbue it with life and can quite properly regard it as animate. It is animate because we are a part of it. And following from this, all the metaphorical properties so favored by poets make perfect sense. The pathetic fallacy is a fallacy only to the ego clencher. What? Once again, then of course we imbue it with life and is animate because we're a part of it. And following this, all the metaphorical properties so favored by make perfect sense. The pathetic fallacy is a fallacy only to the ego clencher. Okay. But that's not what Ruskin is saying. Everyone invented the pathetic fallacy as a dominant trope of ecology, performed whenever it is asserted that humans are not just joined from the natural world, but they instead exist together with that world in an interrelated ecosystem in which there are no discrete entities. It is clear that this fallacy is active not just in the philosophy of ecology, but the broader social sensibility and environmentalism is also interwoven with this rhetoric. Pathetic fallacy resounds such concepts as Gaia and the biosphere. They're at work in figures from Mother Earth, a spaceship Earth, their images and avatars from the famous Apollo mission, photographs of the planet and the polar bears that roam the icy wastes of ecological sentiment. Indeed, the very term ecology contains a pathetic fallacy in that its etymology assumes us to be at home in the world. From this perspective, Ruskin's Stormcloud can be proclaimed as an exemplary work of eco-critical literature precisely because it commits the pathetic fallacy and that it contravenes the critical rule that no dialogue may exist between human sentiments and the natural world. Okay, so there's this contradiction between modern painters and Stormcloud. 3 readings of Ruskin have been outlined. The first interprets Ruskin's claim that language can change the climate as a metaphor, despite Ruskin's explicit injunctions that this is not what he means. The second reads Ruskin's claim as inconsistent, falling victim to the pathetic fallacy in a type of performative contradiction. For the third, the connections Ruskin sketches between language and weather are indeed a pathetic fallacy, but this is now seen as positive in politics of environmental reconciliation. In effect, all 3 read Stormcloud as invoking an answerable world, a cosmos responsive to our sentiments. The theory of the pathetic fallacy demands that we reject the fantasy of an animate universe that speaks back to us. In Stormcloud, our words construct the heavens that lie above our heads. How else can we read these atmospheric messages? In this word paper, I reinterpret Ruskin's claim about language changes the climate as a claim about the medium of language, not about the responsiveness of the world to our words. I argue this claim is not a pathetic fallacy, but is instead premised on the defensible materialist idea central to romanticism. The atmosphere is a medium of communication and perception. Indeed, the atmosphere is the first modern medium. Okay.